how Marie Curie became a two-time Nobel Prize laureate. Stick around to find out.
This is a continuous improvement movement reserved for the few with the grit to prove it. Everybody claim, but the click exclusive. Many pursue, but it's too elusive.
Marie Curie is best known for her contributions to the field of radioactivity. She was born in Warsaw, Poland, in a time where women were barred from education. Calvin, she had a lot of other hardships, financial hardships. She lost her mom. And despite all that, she won two Nobel Prizes, one for physics, one for chemistry, and we are still talking about her 157 years later. What do you think was her secret sauce?
Well, given that she's someone who did not have a lot of access to education, obviously she had academic achievements that most of us could only dream of and maybe not even quite aspire to. But she did it, right? I think she showed the world, and she's an inspiration to everyone, but especially to women, right? And if you look at the dynamic in academics today, women are enrolling in college at higher rates. They tend to get better grades in school, all the things. And it may be a byproduct of the history of women, not receiving a fair opportunity to get a good education like what Marie Curie faced. So, but what's her secret sauce, though, was your question. I think it's more that she took it upon herself to learn. She was a self-learner.
She taught herself math and physics. And later in her life, she decided to go to college. And she entered the college. She was a little scared because she had to compete with a mostly male-dominated, environment.
Yeah.
But even so, she was second in math and first in physics.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, she certainly had a chip on her shoulder. But clearly she was an extremely talented person, right? And we were talking before we start recording is that this is someone who society has said could never contribute in these spaces,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were not educating women, right? And society said, hey, women, there's another place for women in our world. She showed that, hell, women can do anything men can do and even better. in many cases. So I think her work in the field of radiology, I mean, we use radiology everywhere today, right? I don't even want to give all the, X-ray, the list goes on and on, right? Her contribution has made our lives infinitely better, especially in the space, health and technology and some of those other spaces. So I think it's huge, but that attribute, that character attribute of being a self-learner has infinite potential for those who have that and exercise that, take interest in something and just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of coders today are self-taught.
Yeah, a lot of people in a lot of fields because nowadays education is pretty much democratized. Anything you want to learn, just jump in your computer, Google it, ask ChatGPT, and you will get some answers. So I think nowadays you have no excuse to pursue learning on your
Absolutely.
own.
And if you look, let's tie it back to continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
The true definition of Kaizen, we look at it, the two Kaizen kanjis as continuous improvement. But if you go a step deeper and literally translate the kanjis, it's self-whip or self-discipline for the greater good of the community, right? And she exemplifies the true definition of Kaizen here,
Mm-hmm.
right? She said, hey, I'm going to pick up these books and I'm going to learn this stuff from the greatest thought leaders in the history of these topics,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she made herself into what she became. If everybody takes that mentality to work every day, then creating a culture of Kaizen is self-evident,
Mm-hmm.
right? It brings itself into existence.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Because it's that improving yourself for the greater good of the community. I think she exemplified that, especially in her field of study.
Absolutely.
Because just imagine, she was working with very dangerous elements, and she was alongside her husband later on, alongside her husband, she was putting long hours. It was failure after failure. And, there were side effects to her body from her work, and she continued.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was her life's work.
That's it. And I can guarantee you she never took a lean course.
Right.
or never learned Kaizen from the consultants.
Yes.
She took an interest in something.
Mm-hmm.
She had her own North Star, probably. I don't know if it was to win a Nobel Prize or just make an impact on the world, but she took it and ran with it, and she took it upon herself to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And really, that's what it all comes from. That's what it all comes down to. Question is, how do you instill that in another human being? How do you instill that in an entire team of people? How do you instill that in a whole organization of people, right? And this is the challenge that leaders face, trying to create a culture of continuous improvement within their company, right?
I think they can start by leading by example, I think
that's the number one.
Show that they are learning.
Yeah.
And that they are taking on that journey of self-learning.
Absolutely. I think that's number one. That's the greatest tool of influence anybody could ever have, is lead by example, but also have success in that endeavor, right? And too often we see leaders who, they just kind of sit back and they kind of get on other people and, hey, you do this, you do this, you do this, but for every finger you point forward, there's 4 more fingers pointing back at you.
Right back at you, yeah.
And leaders can take that, and say, hey, all right, let me show what it looks like to have a scientific mentality, to try something, learn from it. That worked or it didn't work. Let me try something else. Be objective about the outcomes and the results that you're seeing, and then reflect and adapt and try something else, and stay on that trial and error journey into the unknown until you reach your, using your North Star as a compass to move forward. So shouts out to you, Marie Curie.
Yes.
You're an inspiration to us all. Thank you for what you did, even though it was, almost 200 years ago.
Well, what an inspiration. I mean, that is what you call inspiration.
Absolutely.
If people are still learning from you and talking about you 200 years later.
You did it. You did it. You did it big. Keep doing it.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Let's get better every day, and let's keep learning from all these inspiring people, and we'll see you again tomorrow. For daily news on operational excellence and how it relates to current events, check us out on the Ticket to Freedom podcast.
Simply subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay up to date on the latest developments in continuous improvement.